All right, now we're going to do a problem that has a lot of variables, or at least a couple different ones, t's and z's. And I want to show you how you can treat it the same way as I've trained you with the other problems. So the first thing I teach my students is to take this one and put it underneath that one in a giant compound fraction. So 42t over negative 14z over that, negative 6 over 7t. Now, in this step here is when I have asked my students to deal with signs. So we've got a negative here and a positive. If there's not a sign in front of a number, we assume it's positive. We assume that one's positive. And just making sure everything's in the screen there. Negative or positive and a negative make a negative. So I want to rewrite this 42t over 14z, where the positive and negative make this whole fraction negative. And that's over 6 over 7t, so I'm basically just copying that. And negative and positive make this whole fraction negative. And then I'm going to write it again where we show that these two negatives make the whole big fraction positive, because then a negative and a negative make a positive. So, and if you've forgotten your rule for signs, a positive and a negative make a negative. Negative and a positive is obviously the same thing. Two negatives make a positive, and likewise two positives make a positive. That's just a little trick for showing my students, helping them remember their signs. Negative and a negative make a positive according to our rules. So let's rewrite it. 42t over 14z and giant compound fraction 7t. The negative and the negative now have made a positive, and you can write it there, but you don't have to. It's an understood, so we can ignore it. And why not? It cleans up our workspace. So now we're going to do the same thing we've always done with these problems, is take the reciprocal, even though this is a crazy looking fraction because it's got variables in it. It's not any different. The reciprocal, we flipped it, and to make this legal we've got to do the same thing on top, because this whole thing has to be a giant 1 multiplied by that. Otherwise, if we don't use this 1 here times that, we change the identity of this, and suddenly when we get over here it'll be a different problem. So all we're doing is using this fancy 1 that has been handcrafted by our wise mind using the reciprocal, because using the reciprocal is going to cause the bottom to always turn out to be a 1 that can be ignored. And let me demonstrate that. 6 times 7, 42, and the t, so 42t over 42t, and on top we've got 42 times 7, 294. 294, t times t is t squared, and 14 times 6, 84, and the z is still involved in that multiplication, so it tags along. Obviously, anything over itself is just a big 1, so we can ignore that. We can just drop it in our next step. 294 t squared over 84z. And now we essentially have our answer, but we need to reduce this fraction. And what we want to know is, how many times does 84 go into 294? And I'll go ahead and use my calculator. 294 divided by 84 is 3.5, so it doesn't go in evenly. So now I would like to see, I'm going to see if half of this will go into that. So 84, half of 84, we'll try 42, 294 divided by 42 does go. If we divide by 42, the greatest common multiple, and I know that that'll go into that because I chose it, it's half of that. So if we reduce the top and the bottom by the same proportion, then our fraction remains true. So 42 goes into 294 7 times, and it goes into 84 twice. So keep our t squared and our z. And now 2 goes into 7 3 times, with the remainder of 1. And so it would be t squared over z. 3 1/2 t squared over z. I would be satisfied right here. If you took it a step further, that would be even better. And so this problem is pretty complicated. We probably have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, at least 7 points. I might not push my students to get all the way down to that fraction over there, but so that's a pretty interesting problem, pretty involved, and I thought I would go through one of those so that if you encounter one, you would know what to do. And as you can see, if you followed along the process that I've shown, if you follow the format that I've taught, then everything should just be digestible